War. War never changes. In the year 1932, Sir George Pearce, the leader of the defence, was approached by a posse of discharged veterans turned farmers. They wished for the death of all emus. Major Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery commanding his men, Sergeant S. McMurray and Gunner J. O'Hara. They were armed with only 2 Lewis guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. Western Australia awaited Armageddon. Instead, something miraculous happened. These men could not kill the emus. They were too strong. The emus had won. The farmers awoke from the emu dream. Years of destruction led to shortages of every major food group. All of Australia suffered. It is now the year 2024. We stand in a land ran by emus. I'm scared for myself and for my stomach. Because if my time in school taught me one thing, war never changes.
All those wars that you've heard of, go ahead and forget them. Every last one of them. This is the only one you'll ever need to know about. It's called the Emu War. I'd like to note that the emu is Australia, my country's national bird. Other countries like the US treat their bird, the bald eagle, as a symbol of peace, hope, and love. We hunt and kill them. They're pests. Our national bird is a pest. See, back in the 1930s, there was this little thing that you may have heard of. It was called the Great Depression. So the whole world was poor. No one could buy our exports. Our largest source of income, which was other countries, dried up. And to make things worse, the British pound collapsed. So did our dollar. It was directly tied to the British pound. Australia was as poor as any other country. We were hit hard. And since we were blocked off from the rest of the world, we needed to become self-sufficient. The only way to do this was farming the unfarmable. Our soldiers come back from this little war, World War I, right? And they needed something to do. So the government said, we have bountiful land. How about we give you some crops of land and a bit of money, and you can farm it? These veterans then got their own farms and started to farm the land. First year comes around and they're loving it. The Australian economy is being held up by these people. This is the only food, the only clothes, the only material that we would get in this country because we were locked off from the rest of the world. First year comes around, the crops are looking succulent, they're healthy, they're strong, they're brilliant. A couple months out from harvest time, it's looking fantastic. And the emus, they had just finished breeding season. See, they're inland at the moment, out where almost no one is. They've finished their breeding and they're coming to the shores. They're coming down west. And what do they find when they come down west? Bountiful lands of crops. Something that they hadn't really seen before. Normally, they just go to fields that are grown naturally, but now there were strategically grown crops like wheat, corn, buttery, beautiful. They couldn't help themselves. They broke into the fields, they ate it all. They knocked down the fence, the rodents got in. The farms were destroyed. Many farmers were left with nothing. The Australian economy had no food. The average Australian was going hungry because the emus broke in. So these farmers lobbied for Sir George Pearce to do something about the problem. He was the defence minister of the time. Pearce got 3 soldiers, Major Meredith at the helm, to go deal with the problem. They had 10,000 rounds of ammo and 2 guns. They headed out west to go thin the herd. There was a little problem though. The goddamn emus were crazy. They would approach a herd of them, and they'd go to unload their gun, and they would scamper away. The few that they shot would just simply run off, almost unharmed. And the few emus that did get hit, they could take a few bullets. They survived. They struggled to kill any emus. So Meredith thought, let's head south. He'd heard that they're much more tame down that way. He thought maybe, just maybe, he could thin out those ones. And he thought, we can't keep up with the emus. So let's take a ute and put a gun on top. You'd be able to drive alongside the emus and unload into them. Problem was, the aim was absolutely impossible. It was worse. He couldn't hit any emus with it, so they scrapped the idea almost immediately. These men used over 2,500 rounds of ammunition to kill at most 50 emus. The emus had one major comeback crawling to Sir George Piers. "Please, sir, can we please have some more ammunition, sir? We might be able to deal with the emu problem, sir. I just need more ammunition, sir." See, the farmers also begged alongside Meredith, but the media had already caught on and absolutely slandered the Labour government in the media.
Now they're retiring, off at 40 miles an hour. Well, instead of the birds ruining the farmers, it seems the tables are turned, and there'll be no more damage done here for many a day to come.
The military looked weak. We couldn't even kill some simple emus. So the military decided, we're gonna back out of this one. They didn't want to look bad, and the Australian government agreed. So they said to Meredith, we're gonna leave this problem alone. But the farmers, they were being devastated. They kept begging and begging, and for years they were lobbying. James Mitchell, the Premier of Western Australia, continued to beg the military, please help us. The farmers were being devastated. Western Australia, the food source of Australia, was struggling. They could not grow anything. The military was being begged by everyone. On November 12th, Sir George finally approved the military to go back. But there was strings attached this time. The government would provide the guns, not the men. But there was no one skilled enough in Western Australia to take up the reins. There was no one that could do it. So it fell back into Meredith's lap. Funnily enough, attempt 2 was proven very successful. Meredith's team killed many emus, but the media didn't care. The military had already been made into a weak, wet bag. Meredith had won, but at what cost? Meredith went home proud, with an emu feather in his hat. In 1934, 43 and 48, the farmers again begged and lobbied the government to do something about the emus. The military was not coming back. They were never going to return to Western Australia to cull the herd. They'd done it twice and neither attempt was relatively successful. Instead, a bounty system was put into place. It seemed to work, as in 6 months, 57,000 emus were turned in. Then in 1950, Hugh Lassie brought the problem back up in Parliament again. He urged the Army Minister, Francis, to release at least some ammunition to the farmers so they could defend their land. He agreed and released over 500,000 rounds of ammunition. So the Emu War is a very strange thing in Australia's history. If you look back on it, in the grand scheme of things, the Australians won. We were able to thin out the herds and emus don't cause as much havoc as they once would have. But the simple fact of the matter is, out of the 3 battles, we lost 2 of them. The first one was a bloodbath, where we killed merely 50 emus. The second one reports well over 1,200 emus killed. And the third battle in 6 months, well, 57,000. That's relatively good over the entire country. Point is though, emus are versatile and are strong. And it's kind of strange that our national bird, the bird on our coin, the bird in Parliament, the bird that you think of when you think of Australia, is a pest. Something that we try to kill today, still. Something that destroys our land and gets in and almost devastated Australia. It's something very shameful. The military was embarrassed by a bird and we didn't really know what to do. But it was done in desperation. Because if we didn't deal with it, we would have went hungry. And looking back in the 1930s, countless people did go hungry. The Great Depression was horrible here. Once the borders opened back up and the world started trading again, Australia started to thrive. But the emus, did not help. The emus really caused a lot of problems to us. Thus, the Emu War becomes a very historical thing here. Australia's only ever really gone to war by itself against one other thing, and it's emus. That's our history. That's our world. We went to war with our national bird. Today, emus are still loved. They're still pests. They are still pests, but they are much more loved than they once were. We don't hunt them for fun, although in some states they are still a problem. Our national bird being a pest is something that I think is quite disappointing for this country, but it's also very, very funny, and I always loved bringing up the Emu War to everyone I met, and I think that other countries, when they hear about the Emu War, their mind is blown. Like, imagine America having an all-out war on the bold American eagle, and 57,000 bold American eagles being killed and turned in. That just wouldn't happen in any other country, especially not America. But here, we did that. We hunt, kill, and rewarded the death of our national bird. We try to commit genocide against our national bird. That's Australia. That is this country. It is amazing, it is horrible, and it is brilliant.
If we want one of your cars, we'll certainly let you know.